Let's talk about fatigue, and you can tell how tired I was. I spelled fatigue wrong, so definitely fatigue is real, you guys. So let's go
Mhm.
through this presentation. You know, when I was talking about kids having spring break, and the reason why I started thinking about fatigue, because I was thinking, like, man, I need a spring break. Like, tired this first quarter, and it's only at the only March is when I was thinking about this topic. So I wanted to dive in and look at ways that we could better organize our days, some strategies, some important components to the recovery process to ensure that we are trying to um, preserve and protect our energy. So, the very first thing is pacing your energy. And they talked about an energy envelope. And you wake up every day and you have this certain amount of energy in your envelope. And we all know there's some days that my envelope has a little bit more in there. And then there's days where that envelope is not as full. And I think that that's important to be mindful of when we're planning out our day, that there are going to be days that we don't have as much energy in that envelope. So we have to think about our brain like a battery that drains faster now post injury. And things like break tasks into smaller chunks. If it is a task that is going to require more time, breaking it into smaller chunks and being okay with, hey, maybe I need to break that going through that closet into 3 different days instead of trying to tackle it all in one day could make a big difference for how you feel with that task, and also how well you're able to complete the task, because of course you're breaking it up. This one's big for me because I don't do this enough, but stopping before you feel exhausted, not when or after you feel exhausted, is being more mindful of when that time is coming, and that way we can stop the energy exertion or the task before it is past the point of where we are still able to function and not feel bad, because at the end of the day, when we run that energy out, there's sometimes it's hard to bounce back, and that feeling of being drained can do something to us too. Alternating activity with rest. An example is if you're doing a task or an activity for 30 to 45 minutes, to add in breaks. And I was, thinking about, one day that I was exhausted. I had a friend that wanted to go to the mall, and, I was thinking, like, I should have said, let's go to the food court. Let's go grab, a cup of coffee or even lunch. But just adding in that 10 to 15-minute break where, number one, we know food and quote unquote fuel can make us feel better, but just taking a moment out of that busy, crowded, loud environment would have done me a lot of justice this particular day that I felt just really wiped out after. I don't do a lot of busy stores. I try to avoid them at all cost if I can. But the keynote and takeaway on this one is just overdoing it oftentimes leads to a crash later. And sometimes it's the next day. So that's when it's really hard to gauge, and really even more steps need to be taken into consideration if you are seeing that the crash can be the next day, because you might have plans and have things lined up for that next day. So it makes it hard, and you run into that stressful situation where you have a lot to do and either not a lot of time or not a lot of energy. So next, let's see here. Let me see. Prioritizing sleep. So, sleep is something that we all know is when our body is healing. That is when recovery and cells are regenerating, and we're resting and trying to build up more energy for the next day. But we know that poor sleep, we have worse fatigue. So, things to keep in mind are keeping consistent sleep wake times. Believe it or not, that consistency can really help with our ability to get better sleep. Limit screens 1 to 2 hours before bed can absolutely make an impact in how well you sleep and rest, because we are trying not to have those lights and those we know that the screens we're looking at lights. And so trying to remove that an hour to two before bedtime. And also, believe it or not, it can really be helpful too if we avoid it an hour after waking up. Okay, so trying to avoid the screen an hour to two before bed, an hour when you wake up. Avoid caffeine after early afternoon because that can affect our ability to go to sleep at night and stay asleep, which is when we need that rest. Creating a dark, cool sleep environment. And I know some people may have different preferences. So not everybody fits into that category where that is the best sleep environment. But I know that it definitely is for me. When I saw that, I was like, hey, that is definitely what I am wanting is a, let me try to see here. I have the wrong camera going. Just see if I can get my camera. See, guys, sorry, turning my camera. Okay, I think it's my webcam that's an issue, so I'm sorry. The last one is if sleep is still off, it may be worth evaluating for sleep disorders that we know can affect some people after a brain injury. So if we are keeping consistent sleep and wake times, we're trying to avoid the screens before bed and 1 hour after waking, avoiding caffeine early afternoon, and creating your best sleep environment, still aren't creating better sleep habits, then definitely we might need to look at seeing if there's a sleep disorder that maybe something could help improve your sleep quality. So, number three, schedule your day strategically. So, do your most demanding task when your energy is the highest. Most of the time, that's the morning, but I'll say that's not everybody. But definitely figuring out when are you at your best, your peak time of the day. Look at what you have to do that day and try to coordinate your most demanding tasks at that time. Again, build in planned rest breaks. Don't wait until you're exhausted. So, looking at where you're going to be, what that day holds for you, and when you could have built in breaks. So that way you are, again, trying to preserve the energy that you have in that energy envelope. Avoid stacking too many high focus tasks back to back. That is key. So, because we know that those high focus tasks require us to be on, requires us to be thinking quickly and putting 100% of our effort into either communicating or whatever it is that the task requires. If we have several of those back to back, it's absolutely going to be more draining on our system. Gentle, consistent movement can be helpful. So it does sound counterintuitive, but appropriate exercise can improve energy. So it recommended starting with light walking or low impact activity. Gradually increasing some of the duration, not the intensity. So walking, we also know that yoga and meditation can help with the calming of the nervous system, which in my case, I do know that whenever I am not in my normal, quote unquote, calm, Zen state, I am using more energy because either I'm stressed or I might feel anxious. That makes me, and I can't speak for everybody, but that makes me feel like I'm using more energy, worrying, or whatever it is. So even that meditation, we've talked about deep breathing, but ways to calm the nervous system, in my opinion, can also help preserve our energy and help fight fatigue. And then, of course, stopping before any of the symptoms spike, so that fatigue. But this helps regulate brain function, which can also help with our sleep cycles. So, also, we all know this, but nutrition and hydration matter, and they matter so much. So, really paying attention when you can. It's not always that we can eat the best and make sure that we're not taking in too much sugar and things like that. But it is important to be mindful that we want to eat balanced meals with protein and healthy fats and complex carbs, but staying hydrated. And that's one of the key things that we want to make sure is that we are hydrated, and avoiding large sugar spikes, because of course we know with the spike comes the crash, and we all know that that is, makes us feel even more fatigued. So, and again, depending on what your preference is, and you might explore smaller meals, but more frequent, if that is something that you haven't tried, because we all know bigger meals require more energy to digest. So, if you're feeling exhausted after bigger meals, then maybe consider doing smaller meals. Reducing the cognitive load, so taking breaks, but your brain works harder on harder tasks. So, as much as you can, try to separate the tasks where you're not having to multitask, or reducing the background noise and distractions if that is one of the triggers that can overwhelm our system, which we do know sensory integration is harder after a brain injury. It's harder for us to go into a busy grocery store and have the bright lights and the movement, which is visual stimulation, and then you have the sounds of the cash registers and the talking and the carts, and it's just so overstimulating. So trying to be mindful of that, and you know, helping in any way. I was at the grocery store earlier and saw, I know headphones are really popular with the younger generation, but I saw an older lady and she had headphones on, and I immediately didn't think she had her headphones on because she couldn't miss out on her music. I immediately thought, I wonder if that is to help reduce the sound, that might be overwhelming for her. But it was interesting how that's where my brain went, and immediately was wondering, like, I wonder if that is why. But she had on headphones in the grocery store. But using tools, we need tools to help us, and that's okay. And we can give ourselves grace that, yeah, maybe a list or reminders or calendar appointments, on a calendar, help us remember things that we need to do. It also can help us be more organized in what we need to do that week. And then, of course, this is the third or fourth time we've seen it. Take quiet breaks, no screens, no stimulation. Let the system, the mind, calm. We just kind of talked about this, but we need to address any vision or sensory issues that could be also fatiguing. So we know vision being our dominant sense, vision doing a lot of work from us all day long. If our visual system is not doing its job at the level that it could, we're working in overdrive. It's using more energy. It's going to deplete that energy envelope much sooner than it could. So, um, things like the eye strain, tracking, light sensitivity, but also the auditory, also movement. So it's not just vision. There's other senses that can contribute to fatigue as well after a brain injury. Number 8, almost done. We got 10 of these, but mental health support, because again, kind of how I was mentioning earlier is when I do feel more anxious or more stressed, it definitely can make me feel more tired because I am spending more energy either trying to calm myself or worried or thinking. So, again, mental health is a big piece of it. So if we find that we feel more anxious, depressed, or stressed, or there's other feelings that could be included in this list as well, then, maybe addressing those and seeing if that is a piece of the puzzle that's draining the system. Medical factors that you need to rule out if fatigue just continues at a level that you feel like is just outside of the norm. We do need to check for other medical factors like sleep disorders, like hormonal changes that we do know is common after a brain injury, medication side effects. There are other things that we need to investigate and rule out and address if fatigue continues to be an interference with your day to day, after taking into consideration some of these factors that we've talked about. Now, number 10, be patient with recovery. We know it's a process. We know that it's not a start and a finish, that there's not an inline, that we have to check these boxes in order to be finished with our recovery process. So be patient with ourselves, be patient with the process. That fatigue can last a long time, and improvement often is gradual, and it's not where we, see it linear. We have good days and we have bad days, and that is normal. So, um, 10 ways to really be more mindful, more strategic with our day in order to help preserve our energy and fight fatigue. So, on an ending note, and then I'll stop the recording, is be strong and never give up.